Welcome to the Mucked Up My Self-Care podcast.
I'm Jill from New York.
And I'm Linda from Tasmania.
We are two moms from opposite sides of the world who are living, demonstrating, and helping moms across the world build their self-care asset bank.
Ready to dive in? Messy, interrupted, imperfect, and most of all mucked up. Let's get going. Good morning.
Hey, good evening. Good morning.
Yes. Welcome to Monday.
Yeah. Yay.
It's been a long weekend at our end, so 4 days.
4 days. Oh, my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. And we just started having the hot weather here. So, yeah, it's been fun.
Yep. Okay, highs and lows. Do you remember where we got to get back into the swing of it?
Yeah.
What happened last week? Last week we tried to record and every single child was here and every single child was there multiplied. I felt like your one child was like 4. We were trying to talk to each other around legs and arms and like.
It was so funny.
Oh dear, maybe we should have recorded as a blooper, like extra bonus episode next time. I'm sure it will happen again.
At some point, you will see that hot mess.
Mm-hmm. Yes, if you haven't already. Anyway, all right, highs and lows. Go for it. Do you want to go first?
Sure, I can go first. Hi. Okay. Declan had his preschool graduation on this past week, which of when we were recording. So it will be midsummer by the time this airs, but it was so bittersweet because we decided not to put him back in the school for pre-K and instead go to public school for pre-K. And I'm just so on the fence with the decision, but it's going to save us a little bit of money. And at this point in our lives, especially if baby 2 is going to be a thing, we need to start being a little more aware of our finances if we're going to be able to manage to have an infant and a toddler. So that kind of became a priority over sending him back to the same school. But then we could just send the baby number 2 there when they're able to go to school. So it's kind of like we won't be gone forever, it feels like. But it was so sweet. It was such a nice thing to see him interact in his in the whole show of it, because they did some songs and he just really showed up for them, like fully invested with his hand signals in the song and really actually singing where you could hear him. And then we had church on Sunday where it was Children's Sunday and the kids were singing also for that. And Declan was the only child that knew all the hand motions because he's the only one that was there that had been practicing the whole time over the last couple of weeks. So you could hear him singing and doing the hand motions for church as well. And just, it was so great. And then he ended up singing with me in the microphone and everyone could hear him actually sing. And we got so many compliments. So now we have to start practicing for some duets in our future.
That's so brilliant. Oh,
it was so heartfelt.
Bittersweet.
Yeah.
Bittersweet.
Amazing. Let's see. Low. What is my okay? It's not. I don't really know if it's a low. It was just emotional. We celebrated Cancer Survivor Day at one of the local hospitals in our area. They put up this huge celebration for cancer survivors that my mom's been going to since she was was in remission, and she couldn't come this weekend with us because she had a fever, so she didn't want to be around everybody. But my dad and I and Declan went and got to celebrate. It was really motivating with the keynote speaker that was there, but it was extremely emotional just bringing up the what ifs for my dad. And as he goes through his chemotherapy now, it's like very odd to have someone who's currently undergoing cancer treatments go to a cancer survivor celebration as a placeholder for someone who isn't in remission. It was just this big tangled like weirdness mess. And while it was a great celebration and so moving to be there, it was still like this just very odd and anchoring kind of feeling of emotions. Like this is still really real for our family. So,
yeah.
And it was just on a couple of days, like today as we're recording, my dad's getting ready to go in to get treatment. He's on his second round of chemo medicine and starts radiation for 6 weeks straight today. Yeah, so it's like a weekend with all these celebrations and anticipatory appointments of treatment. So messy here.
Then
highs and lows for you.
So I'll start with the highs. Had a bike ride with the kids today. There was a come and try day, which was a bit of a course, which was cross-country-ish, but not full dirt bike, downhill mountain biking. So we had some hills and gutters and hurdles, and as well as uphill, downhill, and all around. So I did that with the kids. I think it was about 10K in between us all. The kids did an extra lap. So I had a rest for the last lap. But they really enjoyed it. So that was really nice to be able to do that together. And we managed to fit 3 bikes in the back of the car as well. So that was pretty impressive. Because our 7-seater with seats down and bikes in and people squashed in the back and all sorts of things. So it was a bit of a mission to get them in and out. That was for sure. So, and it was a beautiful day. It was sun shining, sort of winter sun shining and that sort of thing. I think the low for me is we're just getting over a flu in this house. So we've all been hit with just snotty, coughy, chesty snot, basically. And yeah, I haven't actually been hit very hard with it this time. Usually I do get the worst of it. This time I haven't. So it's been really nice to not have been hit by it so much. And so, yeah, just ready to be over that winter flu. So, yeah, we had all the signs of COVID as well. So we thought that might have been it, but that wasn't it in the end. Thank God. But even just doing the tests is awful, especially for the kids. Awful. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Not fun. Not fun at all.
Not fun.
Right. So, what are we going to be talking about today?
So, we are going myths behind self-care. Is that where we're at today?
That's where we're at today. And we have some points that we've popped down previously about that, about potential problems that we see and myths. And in exclamation mark right at the top of our list, it says, the biggest myth of all is that self-care is optional. And we think that's a myth that needs to be thrown in the garbage truck pretty because it's not optional in our opinion. I'm talking for both of us here.
Yep. I think we've learned that a lot this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, it's just thinking about it and what that looks like of not having self-care in your life to some capacity, even if you don't realise you're doing it, I think is a disaster. Do you have some quick thoughts on that?
First question, like, do you remember the days where you didn't practice self-care? Or at least in the way that you do now?
I do. Yes.
Look at yourself then, and you look at yourself now, and like, is your life better because of the self-care that you're practicing now?
Yes.
Oh, right?
Yep, absolutely. And even when I didn't realize I was doing self-care, but I was doing self-care, I think of the times when I had less of that and I was not a happy camper. And I was sometimes not a very nice person to be around because I'd get frustrated with people and reactive, and I still do those things sometimes because I am human. But certainly got a much more of an idea now of what that looks like. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's not optional. It's we need to be able to, like, I think it's important to note what you're saying, Linda, is like even when we practice self-care without realizing that we're practicing self-care, I think that's where we can debunk that self-care is optional, because obviously we're practicing self-care regardless of if we recognize it or not. But it helps us tenfold when we do recognize it and put intention behind it, when we're actually scheduling it in because we know we are low on bandwidth and we want to fill our cup up, get some more energy back. We know we have a busy day with our kids for a 4-day weekend. We know we need to get some self-care in there because it's just going to bring us to our wit's end. So it's not optional, I don't think. It may not be something we can do right then and there when we know we need it the most, but can we plan it? Because we're going to end up creating a burnout for ourselves without practicing that, both in our roles as moms, humans, and entrepreneurs, all of the above, everything that we do. We just we'll go on empty. And we're all
and this isn't really about using others around us. It's about replenishing our own resources and realizing, like, the realization is the biggest thing for me. I think the fact that we realize, hey, we've got a big weekend coming up. Hey, we've got like some things that we really need to take care of, and it's that mindful realization, I think, that means that it's not optional anymore. But what about for people who hear that and are like, well, it's okay for you, you've been practicing self-care and I don't know what to do. Like, I don't feel like I do have an option in finding self-care time. I don't feel like it is a pretty bold statement to say that it's not optional. Like, to say that is a myth. That is obviously our opinion, and that's obviously where we're at episode number 61. But what about for those starting out or feeling a bit intimidated by that myth?
So I have a question on that. Is then the understanding of what self-care is, in your opinion, mythified? Like, are you thinking, like, are there then things that you think the only way you can practice self-care are all these things that are completely unattainable for me in my situation now? And are we not then shifting our idea to what self-care can be for us? And in our notes, Linda, you put some great things that self-care is not, and is where we might be, because we both were in that position of saying it was not possible for us. It is definitely an optional thing. I don't have the time as a new mom with an infant who won't let me put him down and all these other things. I didn't know. I didn't shift my thinking. I thought it was all of these different things that were just not energizing for me. They didn't do all these things, and I wasn't getting the results because I saw other people doing it on whatever social media platform, like, oh, look, they're doing this for self-care, or this one's doing that, and it's not doing anything for me. I don't have the time to try and fit this in now, or it just, I don't have the finances to do this, or, all the different excuses, when there's just so many other things that we could potentially do that will fit into that space for us. Hard. It's not easy to notice that right away either.
No. And it can be also easy to think that, well, self-care is just something that's glorified on social media. Self-care is just something that is, I've got in here, like, doled out everywhere, from, like, the self-help books and all of those things. Like, it can become quite interesting to think about how much we are encouraged in a way that's not healthy, or how we're also, like, another danger can come when self-care, like, we feel like we rely on self-care so much that we reach this level of obsession or addiction to it, where we have to have it right then, right there, right now, no matter what. And maybe that still can happen, but I'm talking about the point where we become so selfish in our self-care, really, in thinking about the other responsibilities we do have as a parent or a mother as well.
Selfish in our self-care. There's so much that we have to shift our thinking in, revolving around self-care. And why do we think that it is selfish? And is it because, like you're saying, we can see other people doing it more freely because we don't know they're behind the scenes as to what makes them able to do it? Are people not giving us permission? Are we not giving ourselves permission to go ahead and spend the time on ourselves? Because I know it's taken me a long time I still ask for permission. Let's put it that way. I have a better understanding of what self-care means for me and what I get out of it. And I do make it where I can include my son in my self-care activities, and my mentality allows for me to take those moments in as energy fulfilling up to a certain point. Alone, because I have to have someone watch my son, and most times I don't want to bother my husband doing it. I feel weird asking for permission to go ahead and, hey, can I have the night to go do this? Meanwhile, he's like, you never go. Like, you don't have to ask, just tell me. So I think we put in our own selves as well, because of fear that we do come across as selfish.
Yeah. And look, I think there are certain self-care activities that can be more unhealthy than others in large quantities. Things like a lot of retail therapy if we're on a budget, or zoning out in front of social media all night and not going to sleep at a reasonable time, or overextending ourselves and saying yes to every single thing under the sun and getting to the point of burnout. So I do think that we need to sometimes the asking for permission is a bit of, I think, our way to think about what we are engaging in, because it's part of a bridge for me. And yes, I could be more assertive in the way that I ask for it. Instead of asking permission, we could just tell somebody this is what we're doing, but that's not exactly in my character either. So yeah, it's a hard conundrum, I think.
I was definitely a person who liked retail therapy as my self-care. And then I figured out that that was very unhealthy. And then I actually didn't enjoy it. And it was actually more depressing than it was enjoyable as I got older. I think that has to do with body changes for pregnancy and beyond. So I don't enjoy retail therapy ever anymore. Definitely not self-care for me. And one thing I'm still guilty of is doom scrolling. And it wasn't until recently, I forgot, I think it probably was a social media post or a blog or a podcast, I don't remember, one of those things, where it was really about resting and how resting is self-care, but resting does not mean sit on your phone and zone out completely. It means something just a little bit differently, even though you're still sitting on the computer, not on the computer, on the couch, possibly. Physically, your body is in a rest state, but your mind may not be. Whereas somehow watching a movie might be a little bit different for our minds to actually have rest. With that little bit of a shift in what you're doing while sitting on the couch, relaxing or resting, where you might be able to drift off into a nap or to actually shut the constant thinking, because you're not flooding your minds then with all of the mythical self-care and other things on it.
And I think part of that myth of social scrolling is a form of self-care. I personally, in my opinion, think that the reason why we like to doom scroll is because social media is meant to be social. We think that social media scrolling in excess, because we're not saying don't do it completely. I think that social media scrolling is a way that we think or trick our brain into thinking that we are connecting to others through a screen.
That is such a good point. And when we're being social, we are on. We are putting energy into what we're doing. And one thing that I've been being aware of is when I'm more sociable, which is correlated with the cycles that we go, the phases we go through in our cycle. And we might not be very sociable when we're about to get our period, but we'll be very sociable when we are in a different phase. So I try to reserve some things for those phases, and you might be able to see that when you are doom scrolling, or it's just scrolling through social media, not necessarily doom scrolling, but when you are engaging online as a way to socialize, you might see a difference in those days where you are in your cycle too.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. All the days when you're feeling depleted, or the days when you are under that myth that it is a form of self-care, or believe that you are resting, or I know that I scroll more when I'm not rested, which is quite ironic, really. And I know that I scroll more when I have done less in the day, which again is quite ironic. You would think that it would be something you would sit down and relax and do after you've maybe, I don't know, been for a big bike ride or done the gardening or something. But instead, if I've done nothing all day, I'm actually probably going to scroll more. If I've had a really lazy, hardly moving much day, I'm going to scroll more than if I've done more in the day, which is interesting.
I also think what you brought up about saying no can be a form of self-care. That we're in this generation, I feel like we're all in living through. There's a lot of us who are people pleasers where we just say yes all the time to everything we think we might be able to do. And
push me to out of here.
No.
He's bad because he's
saying no to certain things where we know will put too much pressure on us or just might overfill our day can just help us out a little bit. I think one of those things is right now that's the worst for me is saying yes or no to kids' birthday parties because it's the season for birthday parties right now. And we just had to say no to a friend of Duckland's because I had work in the morning. Bobby had work in the morning and it was a morning party. And I'm like, I really wanted to go to this for him because it was a place that he really enjoys, but there was no way to say yes to this. I couldn't even get someone else to bring him. So I just made sure that we said no. And sometimes that's going to happen on our weekends where we might be invited to do multiple things. And I do try to squeeze everything in. I am so bad at it. So practicing saying no is definitely on my list to better self-care because I want to be involved in many different things and not make myself available.
Yeah.
Is it really that safe for me to not just stress myself out, but my whole family being, where is everybody? Where are we going to be when this time comes around? How are we going to get from this place? I have this long to get to the next place. And do we need this or that? And how do we pack for the whole day? And
So imagine for just a moment if each time you had to say no to Declan, he needed a yes instead.
Yeah, because it's that age-old question. If you say yes to something, what are you saying no to, or vice versa?
I want it differently as a baby.
I'm thinking more of imagine that Declan wasn't able to hear the word no or say the word no if he had to say yes to everything.
I don't know, because this kid says no to everything I say, and I say yes to everything he wants.
I
don't know.
It's just a flip of the script.
More. I was so more, Mom.
I mean, I find myself
sometimes I found myself only in a situation last weekend where there was a kid's birthday party and it was not aligned with our family values. There was games there which were suitable for 18-year-olds and there were 8, 9, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds there. And that was not suitable for us.
Right.
And they wanted to go at 9 a.m. one morning and come back at 3 p.m. the next day, in which time that whole time would have been spent, nearly whole time would have been spent in front of a shoot-up game on the computer. And they caused quite a scene at me saying no to that. Because they really wanted to go.
Yeah.
So there are times when kids need, and I think even just circling back to the social media stuff, there are times when we have to say, no, I'm not going to scroll anymore. No, I am not going to scroll. I'm going to say no to this right now because it is not healthy for me. It is not productive. It is not resting. It is late and I need to go to sleep. Lots of reasons why after a certain amount of time you need to start to say no in a healthy way. So anyway, I think that is another conversation outside the myths behind self-care. We got a little bit off track, but that's okay.
We missed a lot of these things.
Yes, we do. Yes. So
that is not too mythical, I think, and something that we might think is a little out there. In my opinion, it's a little out there because I wouldn't just go shaky. I'm a dancing person, like a movement person. But Linda, you recommended this would be one of your self-care activities, and it's shake it all out, your entire body. Just shake it out. It's the sillies. You get the sillies and you shake it out and then you just feel better. But what is that like self-care for you?
It's a really good circuit breaker. So it's a really good circuit breaker for me. I with the kids, if they're really agitated, if they're really at me and I'm at them, it's getting outside and maybe getting on the trampoline, or just doing a complete dance, maybe in front of music, or just being a complete, we do floppy scarecrows and all sorts of things where we just flop on the ground or jump up or star jumps, and it is a really good circuit breaker. So that's the idea behind the self-care of shaking it all out.
I love it. And it's something that is free and you can do with children or without children, and you can do in the middle of a meeting if you need to. Just put yourself on mute and turn your camera off and shake it out.
Yeah. And if you are scrolling, getting up and just doing that is actually a really good disruptor. A really good disruptor. It's a pity you can't do that right now with that boy.
Yeah.
Right now.
Okay, we'll hit your scratch in a second. But that self-care idea, among a few others, Linda and I put together just a really short list to help those who may be still stuck in the myths behind self-care and thinking that it's not possible. But reach out to us at our email listed in the show notes, muckedupmyselfcarepodcast@gmail.com. We'll reach back out to you with our short little list and talk about where we are failing self-care, mucking it up or not, and how we're getting better at it.
Exactly. Yep. So until next week.
We hope you can unstuck your mud.
And shake, shake, shake. Bye for now.